So hi everyone. Assalamu alaikum. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. So happy to have you today on our webinar, and hopefully you will get benefit from it and some interest. So let's wait for a couple of minutes to give opportunity to attendees to join us. So we will start in 1 minute till the people are attending the webinar. So, okay, so thanks everyone for joining our webinar today. Myself, I'm Mahmoud Al-Sabai. I'm a sales director in Security Gen, and I'm taking care of the Middle East region and Central Asia. Today, we will have also my friend and colleague, Gustavo Conti. He is the head of pre-sales in Security Gen, and he will tell us about a lot of information about the threats that can impact the telcos, security framework and best practices, and how we can in place the unified security operations. So I'm very excited to be with Gustavo, of course, today. I used to learn from him a lot. So today you will have the student and the master. So floor to you, Gustavo.
Thank you so much, Mahmoud. Good morning, afternoon, evening, everyone. I'm Gustavo Conte. I'm head of pre-sales of Security Gen. We are addressing recent news about APTs, like persistent attackers that are going against telco operators. At any point, if you have any questions, there is a Q&A or there's a chat screen where you can submit your questions. We try to address every question during the presentation. If not, we revert after it. So the idea today is talking about specifically attacks on mobile networks. So how to fix vulnerabilities and how to stop those attacks. First, some real-life incidents. Okay, I'm naming here some US companies. This is because they take most of space in the media, but it happens everywhere. So I'm based in Brazil. We have this kind of thing happening in Brazil. But usually what we see when we have some breaches in mobile operators, we see customer data. You see usually through some partners or some CRM channels. So it's a standard cyber attack, right? So any company can be compromised. It could be oil and gas, could be banking, whatever. What we see is that there are specific attacks focused on mobile networks, like mobile frauds and some specific threats which are associated right now to 5G. So this is some overall vision, right, of how we are used to take care of it. So mobile operators, they are very worried about the IT part of the business, and sometimes the network part of the business, let's say the real OT, can be overseen.
So
of course,
if you allow me, Gustavo, to ask you a question
please.
on the previous slide. So given the understanding that 5G is often described as secure by design, how do you reconcile this with the statement that 5G will bring more security threats due to increase of the attack surface and the lack of operator readiness?
Okay, thanks for the question, Mahmoud. Well, 4G was also secured by design, and 3G before it. Not 3G, it was not secured by design, was not such a strong trend by 3G, but 4G, yes, already. So if you look at 5G specification, it's really better. Lots of improvements, a lot of new tools and embedded controls that are mandatory. But they are mandatory to be available, not to be active, neither to be configured. So in telecommunications, most of configurations are done for availability. So all networks are tuned for availability. No one wants to damage the 99.99%, 5 nines, whatever, of availability and readiness of the networks. So when you start doing security, you may impact some capacity at some elements. You may, let's say, require more CPU, require more resources to bring the same level of service. And this trade-off is not every time taken by the mobile operators. So it's not, let's say, a bad decision. It's just the way we always build those networks. So however, you have these features and these capabilities already on the norm, they are not necessarily enabled, configured, added to the network. And why not? Because there's a lot of knowledge to be used associated to this. It's not just you enable this and it will be smooth as if you don't have the security controls in place, right? So if you look how GSMA is speaking of about this, so they say, oh, this is a map, and they say, oh, usually we are used to work about subscriber data breach through partners, through CRM, etc. So every time people look at it and say, oh, IT assets will be compromised, we need all our internet firewall, we need DRM, we need to protect the customer database, the CRM database, but not the network, because the network or the mobile network was always seen as isolated. But this is not the case anymore, right? So if you look at once over again, there are some missing parts and some things that we have too much. So one thing that we have not enough is awareness about how these operators can be compromised easily. This is a missing piece. Another missing piece is that, okay, everyone looks at it and say, oh, why should I monitor? This is just cost. Monitor doesn't bring customers in, doesn't bring subscriber money, doesn't improve EBITDA. Okay, monitoring is just, let's say, empty investments. There's another mistake I see people are doing nowadays. And no one knows how to address the lack of skilled security professionals in telco, because there's already few security professionals worldwide. But if you look specialist security professionals in telco, they are even more scarce. I have this problem myself. I'm hiring some pre-sales in Middle East right now. I want them to have already security telco background. It's very hard to find. Still, one thing that's not missing is trust on vendors and standards. So same that you asked me, Mahmoud. So people look at the standard is safe. They buy from known vendors from the market, which use secure by design. So they say, oh, I'm okay. I'm done, right? I did everything I needed to have a secure environment. You know, you have secure pieces, but when you assemble those, they become unique. There are not two mobile operators that use the exact same combination and version of software of every element on the service chain. So every operator has a very unique setup, just considering software versions and providers. Then you go about architecture and configurations. They are totally different. So if you don't set up firewalls, protection layers, and you don't review those protection layers constantly, you're just basing your security on trust. And this is not the way anyone is doing this in the market. So if it's not good for standard cybersecurity, it's not good for telco cybersecurity. About the recent events, let's deep dive a little bit on it. So it's not every part of this map is on these parts. So when the operators want to talk about data breach, ransomware, compromising the edge, this is, let's say, everything that's configured is considered on the telco security. But then when you talk supply chain attacks, where the attackers are doing reconnaissance, where is the initial access, DDoS, social engineering, those kind of attacks, they're not really too much focused on the IT parts. They are the attacks we're seeing that's being reported to be happening on the network parts. So taking advantage that we have several technologies and vendors inside each mobile operator. And there is also some shadow infrastructure, right? I've seen this happening. We do some assessments. We find a lot of assets which are not on inventory. And then we ask, oh, what is this? And they say, oh, this is a node operational system that was used to maintain this layer of the network. Is the layer network active? Not anymore. So I didn't decommission. We are using them for storing CDRs. Since when? Oh, since 2019. So you have servers 6 months without patching, and they're holding CDRs inside the same network that is handling service to mobile subscribers. So I don't need to tell you how dangerous is this kind of choice, but it's not unusual. It's not unusual to have old elements, old software active. And sometimes because someone needs it, oh, we still run some post-processing on these, some mediation on these. But this is not formal mediation. This is like, oh, for quality issues. So nobody sees it, nobody upgrades it, and they just stay alive there. They can be vectors of compromising. They can be, let's say, found through some interfaces which they should not be. So this is what we are talking about today. These vectors that can be open on your network using this kind of elements, even if they are not old elements. New elements also has their own vulnerabilities. If you don't take care of those, they will be used against the operator. That's what we have seen, right? Most of attacks we've seen recently, and there's a lot of APT names. I could just be throwing them out here, but not really neat, right? It's just a matter of taking advantage of some hidden layers, not usual layers that are available through the roaming border. So just enter through the roaming border, then you find yourself, attacker find themselves inside some elements. Then they start escalating privilege, leaving from the LAN, say, oh, this has access to this and that network. They move laterally. And since this is not the use case, so I was not defending about this from this use case, I don't know, 4 years ago, I was not looking into it. Why? Because the usual was an attack totally performed and delivered through signaling protocols. So if you don't have any evidence of anyone doing this kind of thing, you don't monitor it, you don't check for it daily, right? What happened, the consequence is that many operators have been compromised, and now we have reports on it saying that some of those interfaces were abused, and they were there for quite some time. So about recent events, I would just name here Liminal Panda. You can throw up every APT you want, but usually what happens is that the attackers got hold of one mobile network and one element, a number of elements inside one mobile network. And from these access, they start performing recognition and compromise that are really not new to anyone. It's not specific. So you do recognition, you look for vulnerabilities out of the books, out of a known, right? CVEs, and you say, oh, is it possible? Is this door open? Is some, let's say, old version of operational system available? And this was standard cybersecurity attack. And this should be blocked by some elements in the way. We'll talk about this in a few moments. But once they managed to perform this attack, they needed to exfiltrate the data out of those networks. And then is where they abused again standard roaming protocols, in this case, SIGTRAN and GTP. Why they use that? Because any network, if you see lots of data through SSH, through FTP going out, it will raise some concerns. But if you are used to have megabits and megabits of traffic, of GTP traffic, of SS7 traffic out, if you add a few hundred megabits more, or a few tens megabits more, it's usual traffic, right? No one will notice that. And that was exactly what they have done. They have crafted through some tools like SIG Translator, etc. This is some reproduction we did on our lab. So we did exfiltrate some data, also all lab based. Okay, this is not real data. This is just a simulator. Oh, how could they exfiltrate some subscriber location using SS7 from point A to point B? So if you have this kind of let's say, compromising of your network, and you can start a SIGTRAN session up towards the roaming border, you can exfiltrate not only information you collected inside the network itself. Maybe you are collecting the information from the IT part. Maybe you're, I don't know, collecting the payroll for the mobile operator, but you don't manage to exfiltrate these through their usual internet firewall. You can exfiltrate these through the roaming border. So that's why I say, oh, this should be prevented, because usually there is a firewall on this border, not signaling one, standard IP firewall, they call it GRX firewall, IPX firewall. It's enough to prevent the first part of it, the attacks, the recognition, even some activations of command and control clients that are installed into the elements inside. So what we're talking here is about a recommendation for every mobile operator to check their GRX IPX firewall, check the logs, check for the validity of the routes, check if you have many hits of some routes, suspicious traffic, right? About the data exfiltration, I will talk it a little bit later, but step one is try to avoid being compromised, try to avoid being swept from the outside, someone checking for open doors, etc. This is all suspicious, and this is all dangerous, because you really don't have control of everything, every software, every version which is available. So you must have a, let's say, closer eye on your GRX firewall and see what's going through it, what is trying to get to pass through it. So out of these recent events, we had lots of, I don't know, unusual stuff, like governmental bodies telling citizens to encrypt their calls, which is, for me, if you're talking this to the end user, the mobile operators also got a call for action on securing it again. They're not usual attacks. They're not only through roaming protocols. I've been speaking a lot about attacks that use roaming protocols as source. They just abuse standard interface. This is beyond that. So tests must be also beyond that. Mobile operators must start testing for other techniques. Consider also the possibility that this has already been performed, and someone can be already inside your network, just dormant over there. And then I had this discussion already with a couple of operations. They asked me, oh, so I will start sweeping myself all the network, and then I would tell you I'm secure again. It's a good approach, but you have thousands of elements, right? So if you start sweeping them today and you sweep them, okay, I don't know, 100 a day, you still have a few months to check everything. So you should start doing that. But considering that you may have some element, which is now a rogue element, you need to start thinking, what if this element is already compromised? Or if it gets compromised in the future, instead of through the GRX file, maybe some supply chain attack, they just insert some bad data into a library, into a software, and you update it on the best interest of security. You said, oh, security patch, I update it, and you open a door for them. So how to think of this, right? If APTs are already inside or can be requesting this service. Only thing I can see is that you need to take a closer vision on your traffic, how it deviates from normal, which is your baseline traffic on signaling, and also use some element profiling. So are the elements behaving as expected? We used to do, we already have these enabled in several customers, doing element profiling for elements that are outside the network. So you receive lots of signaling every day. If one element keeps sustaining, let's say, suspect behavior, we tag these and say, okay, this element is suspicious. You should recheck, apply some rules, contact the operator. Every customer has his own method of dealing with it. Now we're talking about internal elements, right? So we're doing element profiling on internal elements and saying, you know, this element sometimes is deviating from the function. is generating some suspicious cases, you should check inside as well. This is the main finding we get from these recent events.
So if you allow me, Gustavo, about the element
Sure.
filings that we were talking about, what could be the actions that could be required when we identifying some network elements that acting some suspiciously and sending some suspicious messages to the telco infrastructure? What could be the actions that could the operator take against this?
If those are internal elements, thanks for the question, Mahmoud. If those are internal elements, you just first double check, is this software all original? May I just reinstall it? Because right now it's pretty much virtualized. So maybe you just deconfigure, you just, let's say, backup configuration. If it's not already on a centralized repository, you just backup configuration and you start the element again. Let's see if it's something that's been done, applied to it. Of course, do a backup, do some forensics analysis. But if I can tell you, moment zero, you find something shady happens, okay, schedule maintenance window, stop the elements, revert to original software, apply configuration, start again. This is, let's say, the simpler approach you can have before doing anything else. So let's see if we can remove this shady behavior. Of course, if you take the backup, you send it to the software provider, you test it on your lab, whatever. But first thing is to mitigate, right? First thing is to try to reset it to the original software if it's being tampered with.
Okay. This is in case if it's internal node. What if the case if it is somehow external node that is trying to communicate with your network?
Well, if you are sure, you double check. If you're sure this is unintended behavior, you may take several approaches. Let's say it's your bigger partner, a bigger roaming partner. You just contact them. You have a relationship between operation center. You just call the guy and say, oh, come on, something is happening. Is this address is yours? Is someone spoofing it? You have some trouble internally? They will check and revert. This is the usual, let's say, operational level interchange. If it's not your partner, or if it's, let's say, a not preferred partner, that I would say, you could just block these elements. You notify them, of course, if you have interest of them recovering, but maybe it's some operators or some country you don't have active roaming plans. In that matter, they should not be signaling with you anyway. You should just do a full blacklist on that.
Okay, clear. Thank you.
Thanks, Mahmoud, for the question. Again, some of the questions may be coming from the audience. I really appreciate if you can contribute on the Q&A or on the chat. Thank you. So yeah, well, again, Mahmoud, what to do, right? So let's take a look on other things we can do to prevent this. First, as always, right? Security is not something you do and you stop. Oh, I applied security to it, it's done. It's always a process. I like NIST framework. There are some others. I like also Mitrified framework, which is the Mitri attack applied to 5G. We have them reflected already back to GSMA documents. So we see a lot of frameworks that apply to this use case. I will work on NIST here just for simplicity. But NIST, originally, they had defined identify, protect, detect, respond, and recover phase. Afterwards, they implemented govern. So we need governance overseeing all these because everything can fail, right? Everything may fail you. So when I'm talking about these latest attacks, I'm saying that we need to perform all of them. And we look how to do each step of it. The consequence of not doing this is getting to a failure point, is getting to a point where you got breached or you have some network availability impacts where the cost is much bigger than evaluating, much bigger than preventing. So if you take up a mobile network, this is not one element. This is not even one firewall when you talk about signaling firewall. this is a service chain and a security chain. So every time we do an audit, we do a security pen test on a telco network, we find out of 3 issues we find is just solved by configuration. It's not that, oh, you need to buy new features, you need to buy new products, add 3 layers of security. No, you just need to reconfigure. And every time we test a network, is it possible to bypass security measures in 2 out of 3 operations we test? Why so? So are the firewalls not efficient? No, not every time, not every message reaches the firewall. So there's ways that attackers use that can bypass some signaling firewalls, some SMS, home routing, and they're not even passing the message and bypassing the firewall itself. They're bypassing the chain, because several elements in this way, or this message path, need to be configured in order for the message to be routed accordingly. So what I'm saying, that the usual protection that we apply for signaling, which is signaling firewall, alone, they cannot provide you full protection. If you don't monitor what's happening, if you don't monitor if firewall is really receiving all traffic, at some point you get vulnerable by something. So it's like any other firewall. Like you have IP firewalls in your network. If you don't do sanitization, if you don't check rules now and then, if you don't revise and test from outside, from one side to the other, you have in a couple of months you have some open rules that shouldn't be there. In the telco environment, it's not only the firewall, but the routing rules on the border STPs, on the DEAs. You have several changes a week on these elements, right? Because roaming is a live environment. So if anyone in your roaming partner, I don't know, in France, they change the configuration, they create new elements. If they are your roaming partner, you must reflect these new ranges, you must add these new elements to your configuration chain. And every time you do a change, there is a possibility you change it wrong. So that's why it's not possible to just make sure everyone configures it right in every place in the world when thousands of changes are being performed by month. You need to validate those, and you need to monitor if any change you have applied have impacted your security posture. So how to do it, right? First, you can do it actively. So we have a tool, it's ACE, it's a breach and attack simulator. Those attacks comes from outside the network. They cross your IPX vendor. They come as a roaming message, the same way attackers would do. And when it gets into your network, it follows all the security chain. So it goes to the border element, maybe a border router, maybe a DEA, maybe a border STP. Then you go inside your network, pass through your firewall, pass through your SMS from routing. Whatever elements are involved on these tests from ACE will take the same path. And they will see how an attacker could or could not take advantage of your system. Of course, for the same base stand, we will test some standard cybersecurity testing, because this is let's say, the recent gap that's being identified. It's something that's, let's say, considered solved years ago, and now we see it's not, or it was solved and not maintained.
So about this, Gustavo, about the security assessment topic, I think due to the fact that the telco infrastructure is now applying a lot of changes, and due to this dynamic changing, the security assessment shouldn't be, it's not one-time activity. I think it should be done several times, in a year or so, to identify the gaps, as you have mentioned, and the vulnerabilities that could affect the telco infrastructure.
Oh, okay, Mahmoud. Yes, there's another advantage of automatizing it. So automating it. So if you have ACE, you can just schedule it to perform regular tests, even if you're not actively checking these, right? ACE can be used to automate those tests, and even the outputs can be read by another system. So you have an API, so you could just start it automatically from let's say from a CM or from any automation tool you have. You have Ansible, you just send the call to the API. You can send another call to read the output. And if you find something unusual, you can set an alarm for someone. So it doesn't need an operator seated there sending tests 24/7. You can set the number of tests you wanna have. You can send it, of course, for a monitoring team if you want, for them to revise every Monday, every day, every other week. Depends mainly on the operator, their risk appetite. But it's a tool, and it can be even fully automated and integrated with alarm systems, and just notify end users when some vulnerability is found.
Yeah, good.
Okay. Of course, you have ACE, you know which vulnerabilities can be done, but that's the question we always receive, right? Okay, so you're experts on security gen, they could find this vulnerability, but is really a threat for me? Is someone abusing this vulnerability? I cannot answer this by ACE. By ACE, I tell you the door is open. But if it's someone is inside or getting information out of your network, you need to monitor them, not me, not my test. So we have IDS, we have some security monitoring layer that can be added to it in order to provide this protection, right? IDS will also be very relevant to these new threats. I'll check this in a few slides. And in the end, you have multi-protocol firewalls. So you can deploy firewalls for every protocol used, from SS7 to HTTP2. So go to diameter, go to GTP, and you can just also correlate these data between one protocol and another. Because what may happen is that, okay, I think this case, right? Oh, my network, we don't worry about SS7 anymore because all my subscribers are on 4G, 5G. We just turned off everything. I said, okay. And then when we run a test by ACE through SS7, because SS7 roaming is still available, because some other countries have not fully cut it off 2G and 3G. So when we do this kind of test, it is still possible to locate, to intercept some subscribers in 5G using this interface. So this is about which interfaces are open for the roaming, not which ones you use inside your network. Then, if you don't monitor these, and if you don't correlate, you never know if there is some attack or some distributed attack using 2-3 protocols at a time that won't trigger an alarm by itself. So how we see all these 3 layers, right? Inspection, detection, protection, working together. First, breach and attack simulations perform the playbook, attacks the network. The message will go through IDS. The ones that bypass the firewall that are effective will be identified on the monitoring layer. And then with these results, you can improve firewall rules. So how does it improve? Well, if it's all security gen elements, it's native integration. IDS will receive and recommend you rules to be deployed on the firewall from the same graphical interface. If not, we have already successful case where we have automated integration between IDS and firewall, so the rule is also generated, translated to the firewall format, and applied. Usually, this is not automated to the end. It's not that IDS will create the rule instantaneously on the firewall and be able to save it. This is not technical barrier. This is pretty much telco being telco, so we are much worried about availability, and we want someone to approve this change before it's performed. Once it's performed, as Mahmoud quoted, you can just test again, because you have an automated system, a breach attack simulator, that will test again to make sure that this time attacks are really blocked. So this is a closed loop. This is how we see to solve also these new threats, right? Because if you cannot do this and move faster than attackers, in the end, at some point, because of changes on each one of these elements regularly, breach will be open, it will be available, and maybe someone will get in and stay longer than the invitation that you would like to extend to them.
So I think, Gustavo, here we see some correlation with the NEST framework that you have already mentioned in the previous slides, that you have to identify the gaps, discover the vulnerabilities, then to protect the network from, and to keep this protection as effective, you have to have somehow a second layer of monitoring, which is the IDS or any other monitoring modules, and to retain some data for the incident forensic or something like this. So I think we are following here the NEST framework as well, in a way or another.
Yes, pretty much. So this monitoring layer is not only about this, because we see this the usual use case, but nowadays with these new threats, you must monitor also the outgoing traffic, right? The one that's being used for exfiltration. So our IDS already identifies malformed SS7 traffic, already identifies some of the techniques that we've seen using GTP protocols such as GTPDOOR, etc. So the signatures are there. We are able to identify this outgoing traffic and to alarm over it. So this is something that, let's say, is new to this, right? Because every time we see the red arrows coming from the left, from the outside of the network, exactly. It's maybe a first time we put some errors on the other side, but still, tool is ready, monitoring is monitoring. So it's really about how you read it and how you use it. It's the same framework, as you said, but we are now paying more attention to outgoing traffic as well.
Clear.
So here we have a vision of CM integration. So it's pretty much the same. You have A simulating an attack towards some test elements. IDS will get these on the monitoring layer, but instead of someone looking at the monitoring screen, it sends a notification straight to the CM. So the CM will do whatever it instructed to do. If there's a use case that matches this attack, there will be a process in place, and it can even already dispatch some tickets to the responsible team for solving it, and you start the SLA accounting as well. So we have several customers working like this. If something which is not expected, not acceptable comes in, no one needs to check the screen or open a report or refresh or anything. We're not providing a new screen. We can be under a single pane of glass with the CM and show them the value of this integration by just let's say just showing or directing the case to the right team to solve it. Usually network operations team, usually network roaming team, which will take the actions to correct and to avoid this let's say attacks to happen again. Of course, talking about bypass file long enough, but it's a no-brainer to have a firewall. So it protects you against signaling attacks. It filters malicious traffic. It improves network performance by protecting elements, enhance privacy and confidentiality for subscribers, protect revenue streams, because fraud, at least in some countries, is very usual. It's very profitable, let's say, mean of getting alive by defrauding mobile operators. this is no-brainer, no understanding not to put a firewall, keep your firewall safe. Just don't trust your firewall, right? That's why we recommend inspect on demand. So, oh, I did a change. You may inspect SSL, millimeter, GTP, HTTP2. Just perform it on demand, recurring, because otherwise you're keeping some doors open much longer than necessary, and these will be used against you. This is the new reality we see when we say that, let's say, some active APT groups are targeting mobile operators. How does it look? How often can I do this? So inspection report of ACE is 2 steps. It's 3 steps, right? You adjust the plan if you need to adjust the plan. If the plan is already created, the test plan is in place, the methods are there, you just execute. It's graphic user interface. You just right-click and say run plan, and it goes. It executes and it's already externalized your report saying how much compliant you are to this test plan, which are the threats, and recommendations on how to improve. So we can do this. Just let's say, oh, I finished after some time, some months inspecting my network. I have 100% compliance. Okay, you store the report and you perform it regularly. So you see that if anyone questions you, any regulator, any blue chip customers, enterprise customers say, oh, are you safe? You show them, you know, I've been testing every day, every week, every month, and I have 100% compliance to those tests, which were defined by my team from 1 year, 2 years, 3 years. So you have this evidence of compliance, you have this tracking. And at any point you execute the same report, it goes from 100% to 95% to 80% to 20%. You know how to improve and you solve it as fast as possible. So that's how you close this loop, and you're able to keep it at 100% compliance. And it's not compliance only to what GSMA document is saying, what let's say you defined it in the beginning. So that's why you need to adjust the plans from time to time. So new attacks will be developed, new techniques, new use case. Maybe you, let's say, acquire a different operator, you do a merge, and you need to start testing their assets as well. So all these, you need to think about it and to keep it effective, but mainly low maintenance and many tests. If you don't have this automated, usually you have single or 2 tests a year for a mobile operator. And what about monitoring? Why should I monitor? So here I brought 2 case studies about operators that evolved, how operators traffic and threats evolved through after they deployed IBS. So this is August, operator number 1, August, almost 200,000 attacks, some of them effective. And then after 4 months, you see this is close to 10,000 attacks a month, none of them effective. The number of attack sources starts at 700 and goes below 300. Some operators, after a few months, they have like 10, 15 attackers per month. This is attack sources, like nodes attacking your network. If not, it's over 1,000 sometimes. So the threats are outside. If you don't monitor, you cannot adjust. Another operator, different scenario. Again, it started with 5% of high severity incidents. Let's say 1 out of 20 attacks are exfiltrating location data, collecting IMSI, inserting fraud, SMS fraud. So it's direct impact on revenue on day 1. And just 0.5% are low severity. 94% is average. Average means unsuccessful high severity attack, or maybe successful low severity attack. Network mapping, this kind of thing. So this is how we progress over time. So over a period of around 6-7 months, it went from 123,000 security events in a week to 138,000 a month start. for starters. So we reduce to one quarter with less use cases. And then it increased a little bit again, but to 300,000 events a month with several attempts, but just 2% of effective attacks, 60% of low severity events, and just 37% of average. So this is how we see progress on the first months. One thing about these two use cases is that those operators, they both had active signaling firewalls over a year before we introduced IDS. Oh, firewall is ready, firewall is trained, good to go, and then we put IDS and you see, oh, the scenario is not as good as we expected. Let's improve on the firewall, let's improve on elements configuration. And then it goes. Yes,
So it's
Mahmoud?
interesting, Gustavo, actually, because if the IDS will, help us to measure the performance of the firewall, those insights can be also useful to measure the performance of the IDS itself. How it can introduce a value to the network and how it can enhance the security culture.
Yes, it's very good to see this when you see the KPIs of the network, right? Of course, we are measuring it, but it's undoubtful because you can also double check it on the firewall, you can double check it on SCPs, etc. Usually the loads on SCP, on the border elements, CEAs, they decrease because once you get to these scenarios and you have just 2% of effectiveness, or we have just or under 300 attackers, etc. It's because attackers just lost interest on your network, right?
Yeah.
You're no longer a viable target. This is about money. Someone is paying or getting money out of these transactions. This is not for romantic hackers. They are trying to prove something. They're out for money.
Of course.
These are real cyber attackers. So that's
Yeah,
why
it's good to have this visibility, of course, in the CM system to extend the capability on the event management, as you say, you have elaborated before, to be not only on the IT infrastructure to the telco as well. So it's great to have this visibility about the telco infrastructure through this.
Yes, it's good. Thanks, Mahmoud. So how does it look, right? You have a dashboard where you can see fast by severity, by categories, defined by GSMA, by events itself, which method is being used, sources and destinations. This has been blurred here because this is real traffic. This is something that's being collected from real environments. So we cannot say who was testing against which subscribers, but those will be on the right. So you have the nodes, you have the subscribers being assessed. So you quickly may act and, let's say, drop these real threats on your side. One last comment I have is about the abuse scenarios. So what we see sometimes when you have this kind of attacks is that an attacker will usually have to use several methods and they will be identified by changing behavior. This we use it to see from the outside in. But now, as some APT can be controlling a network and just trying to exfiltrate data to their network, sometimes we can see one element sending an update location and IDS will see it and say, okay, no problem. We'll say a success response. And then the same element will say, oh, update JPRS location. So, okay, this is not a single element as defined by the GPP because this is not an MSC anymore, this is SGSN. So this message should not be allowed. So that's the impact we see from element profiling because those messages, they are all valid. They should be allowed. But the same element is not enabled or should not be sending the true message out. So this baseline that profiles each element, applies some rules and see the deviations is something that our platform has. So this IDS, when integrated with next chain firewall, it will just block it, your traffic, even if it's going out. And better of that, even better, you will point you which elements look compromised, which elements are misbehaving. And those are the elements, Mahmoud, you go there and fix. You go there and check for software release. You go there and check for any tampering with. So this is how you, in this new, let's say, reality, you combat this kind of exfiltration. So our approach is pretty much to build a set of elements for inspection, monitoring, protection. So all this software is available from SIGTRAN. Of course, some cases, some use cases will be specific for your operator. It's not mandatory that, oh, I need to have your SIGTRAN file to use monitoring or to use inspection for us. We have many cases where we have deployed what is missing to complete the vision, to complete the loop and protect the network. One of our advantages is that we not only build the products, but we also perform offensive testing, and we collect some security monitoring for our managed service customers. We investigate some incidents. We do some tests on our lab, and we keep an eye to all industry reports. So when we consolidate everything of these, we analyze which is relevant, which is really, let's say, a result. Because guys go to the lab, I always ask, oh, when are getting me some new techniques? They say, this is not like, I cannot promise you 1-2 techniques. I promise you, I will exhaust 5G new release, and I check if something is open, something is missing. But when this kind of thing is found, we convert it to our knowledge base, which is the base of our monitoring tool. So instantly, it can generate alarms on it. Also, those alarms can be incorporated in firewall signatures and reflected back to our manual offensive testing and into the ACE product. So everything we learn is kept as value for the customers. So it's not that we see something in a report from someone, from the university, from some other company, and it will not be incorporated. If it's valid, it will be shown on our knowledge base. It will be able to be applied on monitoring, protection, and on inspection, and also on the automated. That's where the loop closes. And this will be what we should be presenting today. Of course, maybe Mahmoud has some questions from the audience, and we could tackle them.
Thank you so much, Gustavo. As always, I learn from you, and I hope the audience also are getting this opportunity as me. So, yeah, we have some questions from the audience. Actually, the first one is a 3-in-1 question, like our unified security operations platform. So the question is, how many attacks do we have in the playbooks? And does this playbook have for all type of protocols? And as a third one, are these attacks also possible on 5G roaming interfaces, if even given the fact that the encryption is enabled for this?
Okay, so we have hundreds of signatures for all the protocols, SS7, diameter, GTP, HTTP2 as well.
Mm-hmm.
So we are able to identify attacks on 5G standalone roaming, although this is not yet the de facto standard. So most of 5G roaming, even if the network is standalone, the roaming is non-standalone. This is the usual nowadays. Yeah. This can change fast, right? We have seen when the US just turned off 2G and 3G, we got 4G roaming, VoLTE roaming, everything was enabled from one day to another, like 2 months, 3 months. Several elements, several networks have set up VoLTE roaming. So 5G standalone roaming just need a catalyzer. At some point, someone will say, oh, I'm defining 5G standalone as de facto. I will cut everything else. The day this happens, we'll see a transformation on the market. Or the day that let's say, operators and IPX providers, they come to an understanding on how to use the norm. 5G standalone norm, if applied step by step in full, will secure much better than current protocols. The point is, when is this happen and how is this happening? Okay.
I think there's a test call has been already happened for the 5G standard roaming. Don't remember the operator names, but I think there is some tests has been made.
There are lots that inside operator groups. There are lots, but still, I don't know. At the end of last year, we are seeing like first intercontinental 5G standalone roaming, something like this. So it's not experimental. It's just not the norm. But if I tell you of the thousands of mobile operators active and MVNOs active, maybe 100, I don't know, less than these have active 5G standalone roaming activated. But the tool is ready, monitoring, firewalling, etc. We're just waiting for the market to evolve.
Good. So a second one is the IDS PAS, breach and attack simulation, AI cybersecurity expert are made available together, or does he need to be taken separately for PAS and ACE expansions? As per the understanding that PAS is for testing against firewall configurations. I think it's more than this.
It's more than this. Yes, thanks, Mahmoud. It's more than this. It's to test everything from your IPX provider to your border elements, to your firewall, to your SNS home routing, to your HLR, depending, because some use case they are protected by the HLR, they are protecting by the end elements in the end of day. Sometimes you do some innocuous query, it will go straight forward because it's not forbidden, it's okay, but then the elements responds more than it should. So ACE, the breach attack simulator, tests all the chain, because any change in the middle of these can bypass your firewall. So maybe the firewall is configured correctly, but still the message doesn't get to the firewall. All those elements, they can be acquired together or in separate. It doesn't matter.
In addition to the firewall as well.
Yes, we recommend you have means of inspecting, monitoring, and protecting. So if you already have some protection in place, I'm not saying I cannot do monitoring. Of course I can do monitoring. It's independent function. Of course I can do inspection. It's independent function. If I have all the three from Security Gen, I have some synergies that are obvious, but it's not that the value goes out if the synergies are out. We don't need to be in the 3 layers to protect you.
Okay, that's good. So the last one that I have received from one of the audience as well, what is the percentage of the traffic that can Security Gen firewall accurately distinguish between the legitimate and the malicious traffic? Additionally, how it does address common issues of security devices mistakenly discarding legitimate traffic?
Okay, this is a good question. Thanks, Mahmoud. So, well, we have I've been on this market in telco. I've been working in mobile operators for over 10 years. So I know how much we are averse of putting good traffic out, right? So
Yeah, sure.
mobile operators are much focused on availability, on having those elements always available, network always available. So about the percentage, I would say you have a very good percentage of malicious traffic in the identification. We don't get any, let's say, with any tests we perform or other companies perform that's not detected. I have no history of these. About the false positives, which is always something, let's say, that we try to avoid. False positives can be impacted by, I don't know, traffic copy issues or some, let's say, unbalanced traffic, this kind of things. So these may get any solution to get false positives. And that's why when we apply some rules and we really applied protection on the network, we monitor before for quite some time. We baseline the network to avoid these false positives to be incorporated in blocking rules, right? So as usual, we can block anything that operators agree to. At some point, some operators will be, let's say, focused on service, and they will say, oh, just don't enable every signature, keep this on monitoring. And if it happens, if it goes up, and I don't know, a number of messages per second, we'll take a look. It's the same, right? If we do, people sometimes ask me, oh, why don't you close the loop? You do the monitoring, you detect, you block. Because this automated tool could be abused by some attacker. So let's say some attacker spoofs your number one signaling partner and sends bad message to that. IDS firewall cannot know who is your number one, let's say, roaming partner. They could just interpret, oh, this is an attack, let's block these certs. And then these certs can be vital for your service to work. So it's just spoofing. It's not a real compromise. But if we automate everything, this attacker will be able to impact you using my tool. That's why we usually don't close the loop and don't automate the firewall rules. But again, technically, we are all into that. The problem is just the risk of overdoing it. So we are very, let's say, conscious of not acting on possible false positives.
Clear. Actually, that was a good one to close the session with. Thank you so much, Gustavo, for having all this valuable information. And of course, thanks for the audience for joining us today. And in case of anyone that has missed the webinar, we will send it to you over the mail. The recording. And of course, if you have any question, you can address us to us on the comments, or you can simply contact us on the mails on our website, on Contact Us. Thank you so much again, Gustavo. Thank you.
Thank you all. Thanks, Mahmoud, for being with me.
Thank you.